All right. So we're going over the 100 best albums of 2022 from my point of view. And now we're getting on the video that everyone will probably only click on because it's the top 10 of the year. And I don't know if that's enough context, really, because I really spread this one out to include a lot of genres and subgenres. So you will find that this is the most packed with my own taste, but not the full representation of the year that you would get in looking at the full top 100. So you'll see a big focus on black death metal and doom here in the last 10. Uh, in terms of Heaving Earth and Darkness of God, it hit number 10 because it is just one of the finer death metal albums of the year in terms of production, performance, unique sound, and the guitar performances being on a level, I think, beyond, far beyond average, far beyond the norm, far beyond a lot of their peers, even in terms of developing uh, these. Uh, so the easy comparison to make is the most recent Ulcerate album in terms of the flow available to the music, the intensity of it, the the marriage of the Morbid Angel and Gorguts and a lot of these things meeting up with more elaborate strings of rhythm and lead guitar work. Anyway, it's just a great death metal album. They no longer really focus on the formulas fatal to the flesh side of things, and now this is more of a modern death metal album. And this allows uh, a lot more freedom of movement in terms of what Heaving Earth is and can be. So I just felt like there was so much to this record that people just skimmed right past, and it just bugged me. It bugged me when I went to read about it after I'd written the review. I think I got to premiere the album, and I was so stoked on it. And then I went and read what other people had to say about it, just as a fan. And a lot of people just kind of glossed over it as a note. And it reminded me why I started writing, created the website in the first place. It was because I kept running into people who insisted that none of it mattered. None of the details mattered. And in this case, there's this great record sitting there with plenty of meaning behind it. You can hear the years of work that went into it and the unique guitar style. Just imagining the time someone spent hammering away at a guitar to make those sounds. Uh, it is kind of a kind of the diamond in the rough. You know, the extra thing that people aren't looking at that's right in front of them. Anyway, I didn't mean to start off with a rant there, but it's a great record, and I think if you look back, of course, every record has gotten better over time with Heaving Earth, but this was unexpected. It really does feel like an important paradigm shift, and just a really fine work that really should be recognized. Um, so I debated on where to put the chasm in this list quite a bit. It really could fit anywhere from number one to number 10, but it couldn't go any lower. And there were so many records that I liked this year uh, for various reasons. And this is probably one of two on the top 10 that just had to be here because, well, I am a fan, and I really am coming from a fan perspective in everything I do. And the Chasm are one of those bands that lit a fire under me a long time ago that really matters to me. And uh, you could tell how passionate I was about that when I wrote about their instrumental album, which I didn't like very much. But there was some value there that translates into The Scars of a Lost Reflective Shadow. So I have a long history with the band and just as a fan. So this felt like well, not so much a comeback record, but a return to all the things that I like about this band with a little bit more of a focus on thrash metal influences. And yeah, in a lot of ways, it's kind of a way of pointing out that the work that he's doing in Acerus is just as valuable. It's just as good. And we hear a lot of the same virtues explored in each band, but in the Chasm, he explores a riff style that is his own, that he has explored and exhausted throughout the years. That um, he now is able to sort of reach a flow state in within while touching upon a lot of variety of influences. So we get just a wild death thrash metal record from the Chasm, which is fairly straightforward. It does have a lot of farseeing the paranormal abysm in its DNA, but there are some long instrumental songs on here. There are some uh, very inspired moments throughout the whole thing, and it just it struck me that, hey, this is the thing that I was saying I wanted from the Chasm right in front of me. And it turns out it's a fantastic, inspiring listen, and it's the kind of band that makes you want to pick up a guitar, and you go to try to figure out how to play something like the Chasm, and you realize, oh, well, this guy's been working on this for 30, 40 years. I'm not going to get anywhere close starting right there. So anyway, uh, fantastic record. I think it's coming out on vinyl in 2023. Kind of holding out for it, but I'll pick up the tape in the meantime. Uh, number eight. Number eight was a pretty big. Well, it wasn't that big of a surprise because they did announce they were working on something in recent years. But number eight is Alter's Ascetic Reflection on Everlasting Spew Records. Now, yeah, Alter's 2013 album Paramnesia, uh, was one of my favorite records of 2013, and it remains like kind of an underground gem. Uh, yeah, I remember it came out on Blood Harvest, and there was just it was one of those records where there wasn't enough hype for it until later on. People realized what it was. They realized how good it was, and it was basically. And I hate to paraphrase this. It does a lot of. I think of it like a Morbid Angel influenced band who recognized the importance of what Gorguts and Morbid Angel did for abstract death metal, and also a bit of immolation too, and they kind of ran with it in an interesting way. And during an era where the most popular stuff was kind of the cavern core leaning side of things. So, with that history in mind, they split up because they had to. One of the members couldn't continue, from what I know. I don't know all the particulars. So coming back and releasing another album was a big deal, and they did so with Brendan Sloan of Convulsing, filling that spot. Well, I mean, he turned out to be kind of the perfect guy for this type of band because not only had they worked out this really complex, immersive experience that unfolds in front of you in just the craziest fucking way, but they did so in the context of a dissonant death metal that will work for fans of classic death metal. So if you're looking for a riff album, well, you get a riff album out of this. If you're looking for an experiential unfolding lotus of insanity, well, you also get that. So, man, I'm still crazy about this record. It's such a cool thing. I think the artwork is just perfect for it, and uh, it definitely bumped a ton of things down on the list because like when I returned to it, I'm like, well, this is just clearly more of a thing. It caught me more. So uh, definitely a record that asserted itself in a very practical way as I was making this hierarchy. Um, and the same could be said for Embrace of Thorns, Entropy Dynamics, which ends up at number seven. This is a Nuclear Winters Records release, and I think their last record was on Nuclear War Now, and it was pretty high on my list back in 2018 when it released, and for different reasons. That record was sort of a black death metal band approaching Greek black metal just in the slightest as they amplified kind of their voicing in that realm. And this record it almost feels like a complete ego death that was rebuilt over the years. And what I mean is they released this quite involved, long rehearsal that showed how they developed this album through another set of songs, basically. So what we get is uh, their version of black and death metal in all of its blazing glory. I mean, it's an insane album, and it's long and involved and clever at every turn. It is memorable. Like I say, there's a couple of songs on here that remind me of like early Necrophobic, and uh, that sort of keys you into kind of a return to the roots of what they like about classic death metal, as much as like war metal or whatever might have influenced some of their earlier records. So uh, even if you're like, well, I don't know if I like black death metal all that much, for sure, if you're a death metal fan, you'll understand the appeal of this record because it has riffs. It's memorable. It's dark, and it's just uh, another one of those things where I didn't understand why more people weren't freaking out about how good it was. Like, it's a fantastic record, and I continue to be such a big fan of what they're capable of. Because, yeah, I mean, anyway, I could go on. They again, this is another band that's been on a lot of my end of the year lists because they've impressed me. I think ever since maybe like the second album, they've just gotten better and better. Uh, So Unfierce is a little bit of a surprise, I think, for the top 10. This is a black metal project from a person I think most people will know best from DeLorean, a Finnish black doom metal project, which is sort of legendary and sort of the underground mindset, but maybe not that well known outside of Finland, depending who you are. Um, Certainly not as well known as other Finnish doom metal things, but uh, Unfurious and Alpha Hunt is their debut LP, and the vinyl is coming out on Smart Records next in 2023. But yeah, I was such a fan of this. After reviewing it, I went out and bought the CD and a T-shirt, and that says a lot because I'm not, I typically only buy like a T-shirt for a metal band if it really left a mark and I want to support what they're doing. But beyond that, I just listened to it a ton like during review, before review. I contemplated the review before I did it because I received this, I think, past the release date. And usually I'll just set that kind of record aside while I work on whatever is coming out that week or that month. And this one stuck with me. And at first I didn't understand where it was coming from. It was ritualistic, it was deliberate, it was the spirituality and nuance available to it took probably about two listens to really sink in. And once I understood where it was coming from, the uh, the things that I like about a band like Faust Coven or Head of the Demon are also here. Even if this isn't necessarily a doom metal record, it does have this sense of progression that builds in the way that maybe an early Barathrum record from like the mid '90s does as well. There's a menacing ritualistic quality to it, which is I kept coming back to it. It's a place, I could put the record on for like 4 hours straight and never hit the pause button, and that's kind of where it lands ultimately. Is that it's just that memorable and captivating, and I kept coming back for it. So, uh, number five is maybe a little bit of a different story. I wouldn't say that Verberis's Verberis's adumbration of the Veiled Logos is the most memorable record, uh, but it is captivating, and it was a similar situation where I was completely lost stepping into it for the first time. It was it's sort of like the floor falling beneath you. It's the abyss showing itself. It's the sort of record where it challenges from the start, but once you learn the language and you can approach it on its own terms, there's a very intelligent and beautifully constructed statement within, and it's in this case it's one of exploration and yearning and uh, uh, really fine performances otherwise. I think this was one of the more inspiring, uh, let's call it a black death metal record of the year. And I think one that it certainly refined a lot of the crustier black death metal, uh, almost war metallic or bestial aspects of the previous record. And you could tell the interim releases had sort of refined that in some ways. But here we find just exceptional performances backing up these new ideas. We're now, like a lot of Norma Evangelium Diaboli releases this year, we're getting the full experience of each bassist as a key performance in addition to the guitar focus. We're getting these expressive albums that are going places you wouldn't expect and being a little like a lot more brave with showing their skill in really strong production values and brilliant musicians. And in the case, when I was going through this record, I wasn't necessarily trying to unveil who had performed on them, but rather figure it out for myself because they were such exceptional performances that I felt like it should be a given that these people can celebrate what they've done on this record. So, yeah, well, okay, so the drummer from Ulcerate is on this record. I mean, it's fucking fantastic playing on this record. Um, and obviously, the guitar work is the focus in most aspects, but not always. The rhythm section really helps to generate value here. And not only that, but your experiential thread explored through each song. Um, so, uh, for me, it amounts to kind of a psychedelic experience, an awakening, a realization. There's something happening here that is crucial, even if you're not sure what you're staring at. And it all came together for me. Uh, so, and okay, there's a lot of longer and more involved records on this list. So of course, those are the ones that I had more time to explore and meant to me. But the most just, I'm just a fan, and this is just heavy metal statement of the year is probably me putting Satan's Earth Eternal as number four. Because, yeah, I'm just a heavy metal dumbass at the end of the day, and Satan is one of my favorite bands. Um, and they have been I think when I started exploring the new wave of British heavy metal beyond, like Iron Maiden and whatever band Metallica mentioned in the early 90s, it was this band that hit me as one of the best. Absolutely one of the best. And Courting the Act, yeah, that's a pretty great record, but they put out some really good ones beyond that. And a lot of the things that I like about this particular one are echoed in some of their late 80s stuff as they began to work towards more speed thrash metal side of things. Otherwise, it it pulls us away from kind of the melodic and maybe more sentimental side of the previous record, and now returns to the urgency of modern day issues and the timelessness of the follies of man as everything burns around us. Uh, Again, it's literally just my favorite heavy metal band, and they can't stop putting out great records. Yeah, so number three is Faceless Burials at the Foothills of Dilation, once again on Dark Descent Records and Misako Un Oho. And so this is pretty straightforward. Like, this should be obvious why I like this. It's Australian death metal band trio who are to have literally just put out fantastic record after fantastic record. I've been a goddamn cheerleader for this band since their first record, and I've never been less than impressed by this group. I think that they've always aimed for this sort of uh, again like a mid '90s standard for death metal plus, and that means peak Gorguts, peak Suffocation, all of that pre 95 side of things. Maybe throw in a little Adromelech for color, and you've got speciation up till that point, and now at the foothills of Deleration pushes on with some more progressive death metal influences, and they're doing it in their own way, which continues to be brutal and of that early '90s standard for brutality. So it's just the best way they could have developed their sound, and I think this is just such a fine record that was. I had it on repeat for like 2 months straight. It's brilliant every time I return to it. Um, I don't want 1,000 bands that sound just like this because you just don't find too many that can do this and find somewhere interesting to go with it. I don't feel like they're just hitting me with riff salad, but they make these connections between these riffs that amount to songs and memorable ones that just convey so much energy that yeah, it's clearly superior to so many things that I heard this year in terms of death metal that it was hard to listen to other old school themed death metal this year, this beyond this one. They knocked it out of the park in that sense. So number 2 should not surprise anyone, I don't think, unless you haven't noticed how much I like Funereal Presence over the years. Well, this is a long-awaited return for Negative Plane, a New York-based black metal band, and the Pact is, simply put, it's a great work. It's a meditation upon Faustian storytelling. It builds its own mythos based around um, Faustian literature and stories, where man makes a pact with the devil, right? Well, yeah, and they also there's basically a book that comes with this thing. You can tell they put tons and tons of work and consideration and time and money into every part of this record to make it something special. And not only that, but these songs are these elaborate bardic black metal pieces that tell full stories that are worth illustrating. And you know they're they manage to be catchy and epic and black metal at the same time, and speed metal too. It's a little bit stunning that more people haven't talked about just that these are such technical but also traditional guitar work, or just guitar work in general on this record. It goes a couple steps beyond past work from the band, which you'll find is often drenched in reverb and a little bit buried by the atmosphere of the production on past albums. In this one, they really cleared the way. They've cleared that space so that you can get directly to the song, in the sense that you might connect with a Merciful Fate album for the same reason. Uh, it's such a fantastic record, and one that I'm still obsessed with. Having finally bought the double LP and sat with it a bit more. It's such clearly one of the most superior records of the year, and something that I'll continue to return to, as I have with their previous discography. So it might be something new to people who don't know the band, but for me, it's just like it's the apex statement from Negative Plane so far, because it is so well communicated and obviously long developed. Um, so number 1 is Rotten Tomb's Vision of a Dismal Fate, which is out on several records per different formats. I bought it on vinyl when it came out, and Basically, it's as simple as this. This was the death metal record I liked the most this year. This is the heaviest set of riffs I heard all year. I think the production is just perfect. It sounds ancient but a little bit modern, and it resembles a couple of records in some ways, or references a lot of records that I like the most in death metal. I think from the look of it to the the design of it to the sound design to the the lyrics to the music, it all comes together for me in the sense that it's maybe it's not the most cerebral or profound thing that ever happened, but it's still the best death metal album I heard all year, and it's the thing that I listened to the most out of everything else this year. Uh, and that's just the kind of listener that I am. I mean, uh, give me the perfect death metal album, and I'll celebrate it throughout the year. And that's kind of where I ended up with Rotten Tomb, was that it hit me like a bolt of lightning that this was the right stuff, and it proved that it was over the course of listening to it 1,000 times. Uh, and I think when you've hit your favorite album of the year, when you find it. And this was just kind of it just kind of hit me when I heard it. It was like, man, I don't know what else is going to top this year. So that's pretty much it. Uh, so next year, definitely not going to do a 100 item list next year. This was excessive for the sake of covering all the things I'd been excited about throughout the year. And next year, we'll probably cut back a little bit and stick with maybe a 75 or a 50 and spread it out into bigger things otherwise. So that's it.